She hit the earth hard, shoulder first, her breath torn out of her like a secret wrenched loose. The train screamed onward without so much as a backward glance, steel wheels grinding like teeth over gravel, the wind from its wake whipping her skirts and flinging red dust into her mouth. The sagebrush cut her palms. Her suitcase burst open, undergarments, and a faded photograph of someone she no longer claimed scattering across the dry, Wyoming flatlands. No one helped her off. That much was clear. She'd been cast, judged and discarded. A silhouette in lace and mud, abandoned under a sky too big to care. She didn't cry. Not then. The sun crawled higher, burning gold over the scrublands, casting long shadows from rocks shaped like bones. Somewhere, a hawk wheeled overhead, circling, patient. She pulled herself upright with trembling arms, blood already drying on her forearm, her hat gone. The heel of her left boot was cracked. She looked east where the train had vanished, then west where the land folded into canyon and silence. When he found her, she was kneeling in the dirt, gathering her belongings with deliberate care, as if refusing to let the world take even one more thing. He didn't speak at first, just reined in his horse, watching her from the ridge above. The wind lifted her hair, dark, unpinned, and for a moment she looked like some wild creature risen from the ground itself. He was lean and wind-weathered, maybe 30, with a rifle slung across his back and a sack of flour tied behind the saddle. His shirt was patched at the shoulder. His boots were clean but old. He didn't look like salvation, but he didn't look away. "You hurt?" She glanced up, blinked slowly, like someone learning how to trust light again. Her voice cracked when she answered, "No, just bruised." He dismounted, knelt beside her, and offered his canteen. She took it. Her hands shook, but she didn't spill a drop. When she was done, he didn't press for more. "What happened?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. Then, simply, "I wasn't welcome aboard anymore." He nodded like that was answer enough. The ranch sat 7 miles east between two sun-baked hills, its barn half-leaning, and its fields empty but proud. She rode behind him in silence, hands gripping the saddle horn, eyes scanning every passing rock like it might jump up and bite her. When they arrived, the only one to greet them was a rust-colored dog with cloudy eyes and a limp. "Elijah McRae," he said as he swung down and tied off the reins. "You don't have to tell me yours." She didn't. He showed her the porch, the well, the spare room with its narrow cot and view of dry wheat. He laid a folded quilt at the foot of her bed, set a chipped mug beside a lamp, and asked if she'd be all right. She nodded once. That night, she stared at the ceiling, counting each creak of wood as if it were a threat. He didn't come into her room, didn't knock. She waited anyhow. Some time after midnight, the tears came, quiet and helpless, the kind you cry when there's no one left to hear. In the morning, he was gone. A note lay on the kitchen table, heavy with awkward grace. "Coffee's on. Ride to town. Back by dusk. Stay or don't. Doors open. E." She boiled the coffee and fed the dog. The taste was bitter and burnt. Still, she drank 2 cups. Elijah returned just as the sky was turning pink. A sack over one shoulder, a coil of wire flour, and a folded bundle of thread and buttons in his arms. She was sewing on the porch, repairing the torn hem of her coat. He didn't comment. Just set the goods down, leaned on the rail, and said, "Town's mean when it's bored." She stiffened. "They know already," he added, almost gently. "Or they think they do." She looked down at her stitching. "They're probably right." He shrugged. "They usually are, until they ain't." They didn't speak again until supper. He cooked beans and cornbread. She washed the dishes. Their hands never touched, but the space between them warmed slightly, like coals banked under ash. By the end of the week, she had stopped flinching when the dog barked. She'd swept the porch and mended the torn curtain in the back room. He found a small bar of lavender soap left over from a long-dead mother and placed it on the windowsill where she'd see it. He said nothing. Still, she hadn't told him her name. The next day, Elijah rode to town again. She watched him go from the porch, the dog sitting beside her like a silent guardian. An hour later, he returned, sooner than expected, his jaw tight, a bruise forming at the corner of his lip. "Trouble?" she asked. "No worse than usual." He handed her a small paper package. Inside was sugar. She stared at it. "Miss Alma didn't want to sell it," he said. "Said sugar was for decent folks." Her lips parted. "You hit her." "No," he said. "Her son." The silence after that was not comfortable. Not cold either. Just heavy like fog before a storm. That night, as they sat by the fire, she finally spoke more than a sentence. "I don't know what you think I did." Elijah poked the embers. "I don't much care. I was someone's mistake." She twisted her hands. Not his wife. Just convenient. Until his wife came home. He nodded, eyes fixed on the flames. "I've been alone a long time. Don't think I know what it means to judge." She didn't thank him. She just stared at the fire, like she might find her future flickering there. Outside, the wind carried the scent of dust and lavender. Inside, neither of them moved, but the silence between them had softened. Not broken, but bent. And bending's the first step toward healing. The mornings grew quieter. Not empty, just less edged. She rose before the rooster now, gathering eggs in Elijah's oversized coat, its sleeves flapping past her wrists. Her shoes were nearly worn through, but she walked the land like it owed her an apology, and sometimes she swore it was starting to offer one. She still hadn't told him her name. He never asked. Instead, he showed her how to mend fence lines, how to tell when a steer was sick, how to read the sky. She listened with a kind of hunger, like every new task gave her a shape to fill, a corner of silence pushed back. At night, they ate on the porch. Sometimes he spoke of things, childhood storms, his father's bitter hands, a brother buried before the war could take him. She never interrupted. When the wind stirred hard enough to rattle the nails loose in the boards, she simply laid her hand flat against the table, anchoring herself. The town, however, did not forget. They came in whispers first, on Sundays, during his rare visits for flour or nails. A turned shoulder here, a cashier's slow count there. One man spat on the dirt near Elijah's boots and muttered something about harlots and blind men. Elijah didn't blink. But the next time he returned, a bruise purpled across his knuckles and a split marked his brow. "You look worse than your mule," she said as she stitched his temple with careful hands. The fire crackled beside them, casting orange shadows up her cheek. "Town's worried," he muttered. "They think you're trouble." She didn't laugh. "I am." His eyes flicked up. "Not to me." That night, she tried to leave. She packed silently, folding her meager clothes into a flour sack. She tucked the photograph into her coat and stepped outside barefoot, boots dangling from her fingers. But as she reached the fence line, a lantern on the porch flicked on. Elijah stood in the doorway, shirt unbuttoned, hair askew, as if the night itself had shaken him awake. "If you're going," he said, voice low, "I'll ride with you to the crossing." She stopped. "Why?" "'Cause I figure it hurts less to leave when someone don't let you do it alone." Her throat closed, a strange pressure rising behind her ribs. She turned back, slow as a Sunday sermon. "I was only going to the bluff," she lied. He didn't correct her, just nodded once and left the lantern burning. In the morning, she was still there. The next Sunday, Elijah shaved, found his least worn coat, and hitched the wagon. She watched him from the porch, uncertain. "I'm going to church," he said. "You don't have to come." She said nothing, but when he climbed onto the bench, she stepped down beside him, skirt clean, eyes unreadable. Dry Creek fell silent when they rolled in. The church bell rang once, sharp as a shot, and all heads turned as they passed. The preacher paused mid-prayer when they entered, his fingers tightening around the good book. Miss Alma's jaw locked like a door being barred. They sat in the back, side by side, her hands in her lap like she was preparing for judgment. When the hymn started, no one offered her a book. She sang anyway, softly, clearly. The verses trembled in the air. After the benediction, as the congregation milled about like cattle unsure whether to stampede or graze, a woman approached, brittle-eyed, mouth sharp. "You got nerve," she said. The woman raised her chin. "I got nothing but nerve." Whispers crackled. A man laughed dry and bitter. "I know who you are," another woman hissed. "What you are." She inhaled. "Steady. I ain't pretending to be clean." Elijah stepped forward, but she lifted a hand. Stopped him cold. "I've been shamed enough, ma'am. Carried it across 2 states and watched the wheels of a train toss me like a broken toy." Her voice didn't rise. It settled, like dust on a coffin. "If you think your judgment's heavier than mine, you're welcome to try and lift it." Silence. Even the preacher didn't move. Then, from the far pew, a voice cracked. "Let her be." Old Mrs. Denton, blind in one eye, wore the same black gloves every week since the fire took her husband. She's got more grace in her backbone than half this town has in its knees, the old woman said. The preacher cleared his throat. The Lord sees all hearts. And the conversation ended. They rode back without a word. Her hands were still, folded in her lap. Elijah didn't look at her. Not until they reached the ranch, and he helped her down. "Shouldn't we made you come," he murmured. She looked at him then, long and level. "I needed to stand somewhere they couldn't push me off," she said. "Now I have." He reached into the wagon and pulled out something wrapped in brown paper. "Picked this up in town before they started talking." She opened it slowly. Inside, new boots, soft leather, her size. She blinked once, twice, then smiled, small, real. "You're a fool," she whispered. "Likely," he said, "but fools stay put." That evening, she hung a tin coffee pot over the fire and cooked stew without instruction. He found a bent spoon and carved the start of a second chair for the porch. They didn't speak about the church, or the woman's words, or the town's silence. They didn't need to. Later, as the moon rose fat and unashamed over the hills, she stepped out into the yard, the new boots firm beneath her. The wind tugged at her hair. She closed her eyes. "I ain't running," she whispered to no one. Behind her, the door creaked open. Elijah leaned against the frame, watching. He didn't ask what she meant. He only said, "Coffee's on at dawn." And in the hush between them, something finally settled. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of belief.